Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susie Byrne, and I am Regional Manager for the National Advocacy Service for People with Disabilities. And Naz and myself personally, we're delighted to be here today and to have been asked to chair this session, which is, and I would say this anyway, but it is a very exciting session. I'm really looking forward to hearing the speakers today speak about the respect for human rights in fostering, adoption and surrogacy. Some of this will be in an Irish context, and it is an exciting time for our visitors from abroad to be in Ireland because there are battles being fought around adoption and the right to identity, which I don't know if Claire's going to talk about that. I should hope maybe you'll get a bit of a mention. So, and I just very much look forward to hearing Freyja speaking about experiences around fostering, and Fiona joining us today to speak a little bit of her experience as an adoptive mother and issues to do, of course, I would say, knowing Fiona as I do, with issues around capacity, the state, control, all of those things that emerge in between. So we're going to get underway, and I'm going to call on Claire McGettrick to speak first with us. Claire is a PhD student in University College Dublin. She is a founder of a group, several organisations, the Adoption Rights Alliance, Justice for Magdalene's, now known as JFM Research, and together with Maeve O'Rourke, who some of you might have met earlier this week, is a founder of the Clon Project, which is doing important research around ensuring that the voices of those who have experience in mother and baby homes is heard. So I'm going to ask Claire to take it away. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Susie, and thanks so much to Eleanor and Katrina for inviting me here today. I'm thrilled to be here. I think it's a really important conversation. I want to say from the outset, tell me if I'm going too fast, or if I'm running out of time, if I'm banging on too long about what I'm ranting about, and if there's anything that, in terms of terminology around adoption, that I haven't that I've said that people don't understand, feel free to give me a shout. So I just want to give you a little bit of background first on briefly. Susie's gone into it, the kind of work I do. Firstly, Adoption Rights Alliance. We campaign for equal human and civil rights for adopted people. We provide peer support, which is kind of separate. We separate campaigning from our peer support network. I'm a co-founder of Justice for Magdalene's Research, and we campaign for a state apology. And as Susie said, I work with Dr. Maeve O'Rourke of NUIG on the Clon Project, gathering testimony from people who were incarcerated in mother and baby homes and who were born in mother and baby homes. So a little bit of background to my research, which I think has relevance for today. I'm very grateful to be funded by the Irish Research Council in this project. And what I'm looking at is how adopted people are managed as a particular kind of category of person. We require special kinds of management. And feeding into that is the notion that adoption research around the world creates this body of knowledge about us, and that says what kind of people we are and how we need to be managed. And these bodies of knowledge, these are how we come to be known as particular types of people. So hence my research is kind of reconstructing that, the bodies of expert knowledge, and identifying how adopted adults and children are managed and categorized and defined. So a question for today, for me, would be, and for you to consider, would be, how are people with disabilities managed, categorized, defined, given specialized treatment, whether asked for or not, in adoption policy? So a quick note on language, because I think language can be a kind of a sensitive issue. We use the term natural mother. By that we don't mean that the opposite is unnatural. We use the term natural mother because natural mothers find it offensive to be called birth mothers, because they would have spent time with their children in mother and baby homes and other institutions before they were adopted. But as I say, I stress, by natural, we don't mean the opposite is unnatural. So little bit of sort of to set you up in how you think about adoption here. I'm showing a couple of screenshots here of advertising for DNA services and explore your ancestry type services. So the Irish state, and I'm sure worldwide, those of you who are visiting from abroad will be aware that there's a big push on genealogical tourism of late. Everybody is supposed to go and find their roots and find their background, and we're all, everybody's excited to do so. Who's related to whom? And I have a couple of screenshots up here of, we've defined our criminal ancestors. It's particularly fun if you find a skeleton in the family closet. We're encouraged to do so. It's the boring is not interesting to people at all. Unless you have a criminal, you haven't got an interesting family tree. But on the other hand, adopted people, like myself and like others, in 2019 we operate a closed and secret system. So adopted people have no statutory right to their birth certificates and their adoption files. Your birth certificate proves you were born. We're not allowed to have it. And in the absence of statutory rights, adopted people are routinely discriminated against. I have up here a couple of quotes from people who spoke to the Clan Project. I'll read out a couple of them. I'm conscious of time, and I think the slides are being made available to people, so we can, you can read them yourselves and other extracts in the Clan report. But I might just read the last quote out. And this particular woman said, "I have found the process of trying to trace information about my mother very hard. It has been the most daunting, depressing, miserable and lonely search. I have faced umpteen brick walls and I don't know how to express it. All I know is that it has worn me out." So the background to all this is, I'm giving a lot of background here, I'm conscious, but there is a big backstory to what happened here. In 1953, the Adoption Act came into force. This introduced our closed secret system. The idea was that illegitimate, those of us who were born outside marriage, would be adopted into this system. And once the adoption order was made, everybody was supposed to go their separate ways and live happily ever after. Sounds like fun. The state's policy here on unmarried mothers and their children also involved the incarceration of thousands of women and children, women and girls who became pregnant outside of marriage, and the further incarceration of women and girls perceived to be at risk of becoming pregnant outside of marriage. And in this city you have former Magdalen Laundry, where hundreds of women were incarcerated in the 20th century. And the church-state practices also involved the incarceration of thousands of illegitimate infants and children born in mother and baby homes and other institutions, and the removal of children from their mother's care through forced adoption or other means, for example, industrial schools. And further, in this cohort, at least 2,000 children were trafficked from Ireland to America for adoption. Now, I also wanted to kind of particularly draw a little bit of attention to what we know of the experiences of women and children with disabilities in this, as it intersects with this system. I'm kind of conscious that we haven't specifically researched in this area, so I'm working off anecdotal evidence, and so it kind of, I won't say it comes with a health warning, but I don't want to speak for other people at the same time. I don't want to speak about somebody's experience, but I can tell you what we have come across over the years. The first thing that we have come across is that natural mothers with disabilities are denied the option in 20th century Ireland to parent their own children, that if you gave birth outside of marriage, you certainly had no choice. And I remember personally seeing that right up to the 90s, the early mid-90s, you know, in my own hometown where I grew up. I have, you know, there just simply was no option. Nobody was, if you were a young woman with a disability and you got pregnant, the choice was made for you. You didn't get a choice in raising your own child. We're also familiar with testimony from children, now adults, where as children they had disabilities and they were in mother and baby homes in institutions and similar institutions. And the anecdotal evidence that we've gathered suggests that, you know, children with disabilities were not considered adoptable. You were institutionalised instead. In fact, worse than that, children who were discovered subsequently to have disabilities, and again I'm talking about 20th century Ireland here, were returned to, you know, oftentimes not by the adoptive parents, but the nuns would hear in an institution, would hear, oh gosh, you know, we didn't realise there was something, inverted commas, wrong, we'll take them back, you know, here, have another one. Deeply, and I'm not, I want to say I'm not endorsing that position. I find it deeply, deeply offensive. Some natural mothers were, thank you, I'm skating along. Some natural mothers were transferred to Magdalen laundries after, you know, giving birth twice. If you were known as a second offender if you gave birth to more than one child outside of marriage, and you were sent to a Magdalen laundry in that case. And many of these women didn't get out, and they remained there for the rest of their lives and became so institutionalized that, you know, they're not capable right now of living unassisted outside of those settings, and that's what that system did to them. It has a particular impact on both when adopted people come to search and they assume their natural mothers went on to live their lives, but they soonly discover, no, she's not, she's incarcerated in the Magdalen laundry, and she's become so institutionalized that she may not remember she had a child, or she might subsequently remember she had a child, and it's just, you know, and it was entirely a preventable situation. To kind of move into the present day, so from the 1990s on, domestic adoption began to decline here as supports for women and children improved. Although I stress, as I say, I would put women with disabilities in a different category. I think, you know, I think that it probably endured beyond that time. That would be my hunch. And the collapse of the Ceausescu regime in Romania and the ensuing media reports led to, you know, Irish people and people from all over the world going in their droves to adopt children from overcrowded institutions. So the demand for sort of adoptable children kind of created a very adult-centred regime. There was, you know, and I don't want to tar everybody with the one brush, you know, but there was a time when it just, you know, people forgot that this was supposed to be a service for children, you know, and we actually ended up in Ireland, we had the highest inter-country adoption rate in Europe at one point. So in 2010, we ratified the Hague Convention for the protection of children in inter-country adoption. So this introduced a better system. It's not perfect, but there are fewer adoptions now. And the notion now, though, is, and this is what gives me pause, you know, and gives all of us pause for thought in the context of today. There's almost this unwritten rule that this is okay, that now the only children that are, inverted commas, available for adoption are children with disabilities. And there's almost an unwritten rule that this is okay. But the question I would have is, why on earth is that okay? Why on earth should children with disabilities have less of a right to a family life, to be raised in their country of origin? Why on earth is it okay to consider them less adoptable you know, and I think we need to start asking those questions and start making it difficult for that to be the status quo. The other thing, and it's kind of part of my research, and it's for whatever it's worth of what I can contribute to the conversation. I'm looking at the research on adopted people in general, and just to kind of flag for you, as you continue in your conversation, I have noticed that there is a particular treatment of children, adopted children with disabilities in the research. There's a particular way in which adopted children with disabilities are dealt with, are researched. You know, I think all of us collectively are kind of, frankly, treated as lab rats. We're kind of, you know, we're treated as research subjects. But I would argue that there is an over-focus on behavioural problems and this psychopathological model, you know, of the notion of the damage done, you know, by adoption, and that we're somehow, inverted commas, dangerous, you know, and that's myself included. I assure you I haven't brought my axe today. So another part of the present day work is, in the absence of information rights, Adoption Rights Alliance provides resources for adopted people and other people to obtain your information. So if you want to get your birth certificate, we can show you how you can do it. It's not automatic, but we can show you how to do it. We're a voluntary group, we're unfunded. We operate a self-help model. And that's where I thought, actually, you know what? You know, because we operate that model, and we, you know, unfortunately don't have the funding to kind of do other things and provide services, you know, that would probably pose a challenge for people with disabilities. You know, certainly, you know, and that's something we need to kind of possibly look at how we could kind of, you know, make it more accessible, make our self-help model more accessible in that respect. So just a couple of slides to conclude. I mean, despite many positive changes here in Ireland, you know, marriage equality, divorce, repeal of the Eighth Amendment, Old Ireland exists for adopted people. It's alive and well, and I would argue Old Ireland, I think, is alive and well for people with disabilities as well. And we've a bill currently going through the Oireachtas, our government, our parliament, that's deeply discriminatory against all of us. It treats us as a potential threat to our natural mothers. And we, you know, if that goes through, it will just further compound the insult and the offence and the injustice of that closed secret system. So I would argue that the state needs to grasp the nettle, investigate all historical abuses, and I think, I certainly hope that, I think we're rising up as a movement. I think the last time I was here, when Eleanor invited me to come and I think you were starting your Voices project and beginning that conversation, and what I was really struck by was how similar a population we all are to each other. I was hearing the same theme, the feeling of being unheard, the feeling of being wronged, the feeling of just, being completely unacknowledged. And I certainly hope that, and I would put that in the inverted commas historical abuse category, the treatment of people with disabilities in institutions, including mother and baby homes. Access to information for all of us, files, knowledge is power. It's absolutely power. It should be enshrined as a foundation stone to all reparations going forward, with a statutory mechanism for all record holders to relinquish their records. And finally, additional measures for people with disabilities to ensure unfettered access to records, information and tracing services. I've put some resources. Our websites are available on the last slide, and if you have any questions afterwards, I'd be very happy to answer them. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Claire. And yes, I think many people in the room would probably identify many of the issues that you raised. I mean, I know from Australia there's been campaigns for commissions of investigation into the experiences of disabled people who were in care, the state, you know, and there were going to be investigations only for one type of people and not for others, and because too many cans of worms opening doors and that. And I think for Indigenous people throughout the world who have a higher rate of experience of incarceration and being removed from their families, and you know, so there's so many issues there. And I suppose just to add, I mean, my work in the National Advocacy Service, we work with people with disabilities who have experience of being in Magdalen laundries, who are now in disability services, and who actually only about 3 weeks ago, the place where people went to live after one of the Magdalen laundries closed in Dublin that became a disability service, that closed 3 weeks ago as a congregated setting. So it was turned from a laundry into a congregated setting, an institution, and then it was closed 3 weeks ago, and those women have either moved to another institution, which is a nursing home, and that probably has been raised a few times this week, the use of inappropriate settings. And where actually this morning I think Carlos talked about nursing homes, but there are people who just have moved in between different types of institutions throughout their lives, and it continues to this day. So thanks very much, Claire. We're going to move on now to hear from Freyja Haraldsdóttir from Iceland. And Freyja is a disability scholar and activist, is studying in the University of Iceland, where she also works as an adjunct lecturer. She is a former director of the Independent Living Centre in Iceland, and has worked particularly on personal assistance services, but she now leads the feminist disability movement TABU. And Freyja, you're going to speak to us about fostering and other issues, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to thank you again for having the opportunity to speak again to you. Thank you for your patience for listening to me for the second time. And I also want to say that I'm quite grateful for having this platform to talk about these issues, because from my experience, I've never had one, so to be honest. And the only platforms I have spoken about my experience of the foster care is a platform I've created then myself through social media and so on, so it is really important. But a few months ago, when I was talking to my friend about being a foster mother, he said to me, like very lightly, well, it can't have been your first choice to foster, can it? And I was a little bit startled by that comment. But I said, yes, it is actually. Because adoption and fostering has kind of always been my first choice in regards to parenting. And it has just always kind of made sense to me, because I have enough room in my life and in my heart for loving and guiding another human being, and believe my experience of discrimination, oppression, objectification, and powerlessness in a system that usually doesn't have your best interest at heart gives me insight and skills and opportunities to support a child who is, in one way or another, has also dealt with similar systems of oppression. And I am aware that the politics around both foster care systems and adoption systems can be really ugly and corrupt, as we have heard today. And behind every child is a story that we as foster and adoptive parents or prospective parents will maybe never fully understand. Also, politics based on racism, sexism, classism, and ableism often force biological parents or parents of origin or natural parents in position where they are stripped of power to keep their families together. That's one of the reasons I kind of chose domestic foster care rather than international adoption, with the hope that I'd be closer to the administrative systems handling my future child issues as well, and also in a better position to know the real story, supporting the child based on their wishes to keep connection to their family of origin. But before I go into the foster case fully, I want to briefly tell you about like adoption and surrogacy and maybe fertility services in Iceland in relation to disability. And surrogacy is not legal in Iceland, and I personally don't have much knowledge about the status of that, but I know that there have been political discussions about making it legal, but it seems to never kind of get anywhere. It's just stuck in the conversation phase. But I assume it is being practiced in one way or another, but I don't think there are many people that have to go around it somehow. And concerning adoption, the legal framework is extremely ableist, allowing applications to be turned away solely on the grounds of any disability, long-term illness, and basically anything that could possibly be wrong with your body. And it's really messed up in many other ways, but if I were to go deep into it, I think I would need a week to explain it, so I'm sorry. I'm going to stop at that. But, and also, according to legislation in Iceland, you can't be denied fertility treatment on the basis of health, which we know is a definition that is used creatively. And if the pregnancy threatens the health of the parent carrying the child, it can also be used against you. And I know disabled people or their partners have gotten fertility treatments, but the cases I know of, it was made quite difficult for them. But there was no legal battle. So I think this tells us that disabled people, especially those of us who are choosing single parenting or who are physically not in a position to carry their own child, and also some queer disabled people, cannot choose to have children in Iceland freely. It's not a free choice. But now over to the court case and the foster care. I was really excited but anxious when I applied to become a foster parent in June 2014, because I knew of the ableist and sexist, deeply rooted traditional perceptions around disabled motherhood. In Iceland, according to the so-called foster regulation, you're allowed to foster if you're in overall good health, have a clean criminal record, have a stable income, proper housing, are experienced with children, and have positive attitudes towards foster children. It's not stated anywhere that disability is a problem and single parents are allowed to foster. The process, according to the regulation, is that first you file an application to the government agency for child protection, which is at the state level, and then they send your application to your local government child protection committee. And alongside your application, you file, probably as you're known to as well, medical certificate, letters of recommendations, marital status certificate, and and the government agency for child protection sends your application to your local community, and they are responsible for interviewing you and doing a home inspection before they write an assessment about whether you're recommended or not. And this particular process went pretty well. I did what I had to do and they did as well. And the home inspection visit by a social worker went well also. I was asked about a variety of issues relating to my education and work experience, my views on parenting and upbringing, and overall attitudes towards children and foster care. I got some, but not many questions concerning my disability and personal assistance, but which I tried to explain patiently. A few weeks later, the assessment from the social worker came back, and it was quite interesting. It was 9 pages long, and in the first 8 pages, the social worker wrote about how I fitted all criteria for becoming a foster parent. My home was nice, I was well educated and experienced, I had positive and healthy views in relation to parenting, And even though I had experience, sorry, I lost track of myself. Yeah, and even though I had assistance, it was evident that I was in the forefront, and the assistants more in the background. However, in her concluding remarks, she noted that she could not recommend me as a foster parent, at least not for a young child, but maybe for 7 years old or older. Very specific. If so, then with major adjustment period, and I'm still trying to get my head around what that means. Her argument was that due to my physical disability, I could not, as she put it, move my body. It's actually not right, but okay. Or turn my head. And this is my favorite, I think, because I think we all must have great memories of our moms turning their heads, right? That's just the most important thing you do for a kid. And she also said that I would not be able to offer my child physical intimacy or touch. And my child would also be confused and conflicted by the personal assistants. And the references he used I found quite interesting too, because they were 30 years old clinical journals stating also that fathers could not bond with their children as naturally as mothers. So this was, somebody must have sent her some material from the past. I was not happy, obviously, so in the following, I wrote a complaint letter to the local Child Protection Committee where I pointed out the paradoxes in her assessment. I was offered a meeting where I followed up on my complaint, and I truly felt at this meeting that I was heard. And the committee decided to get second opinion, one from a psychologist and one from a person with a disability studies background, and that was, I asked for that. I said you cannot add on another psychologist, social worker, and not have someone who has different expertise. And I was also asked to write a statement about how I would parent a child with personal assistance. And I was not happy with writing this statement, since non-disabled parents do not have to do anything like it. And I made that really clear, but decided to go along with it. There was so much at stake, and I was trying to be understanding of their lack of experience. Because to my best knowledge, I'm the first physically disabled woman needing personal assistance that has applied to become a foster carer in Iceland. I'm not totally sure though, but I think so. The person with disability studies background met up with me before she did her assessment. And in her assessment, she explained that there were no evidence of disabled people being unfit parents by default, and especially not when they had the right means, for example, personal assistance, to pursue their role. But the psychologist, however, he did not meet up with me. And he argued that I was not a fit parent, and stated that my children would most likely develop mental illness being raised in my household, that I was dehumanizing my assistants by explaining that they were there to assist me with parental tasks, but not to control the upbringing of my children, and due to my disability I could not touch children normally. Those were his words. And those words he wrote without ever communicating with me, meeting up with me, seeing my, just exploring my situation, my home, or anything. And in 2015, the local protection committee, however, approved my application and recommended me as a fit foster parent. And their argument was brief but solid, where they stated that I met all the requirements of becoming a foster parent based on experience, education, and views towards parenting and foster children, as well as the fact that I had personal assistance, which would make it possible for me to fulfill my parental duties. And as I told you on Monday, according to the Icelandic regulations, you're supposed to go through further assessment and take a course called foster pride when this has happened. And in my case, that was denied in beforehand. So my application was denied on the grounds that because of my health, as I have told you, and because I would not be able to secure a strong attachment for the child, and that my home was like an institution. And at that point, I decided it was time to get legal support. And with the help of them, I have now worked tirelessly for 4 years, and I appealed this decision to the Ministry of Welfare. They also approved of the Child Protection Agency. And what was interesting in that process was that we were writing letters back and forth, and they kept changing their arguments. So, for example, when my lawyers pointed out that I had worked with children for over a decade and participated actively in the lives of the children in my life, facing no barriers in relation to attachment whatsoever, they stated that that was only because those children were emotionally stable and coming from loving homes. So I worked in 3 schools through that decade, and I think we can all be sure just by knowing basic statistics on marginalization, poverty, sexual violence, that not all of the children in any school is, or not all of them are emotionally in a good place or coming from perfect homes. So they kind of just had the liberty to say anything like this. And after this, I felt that I had no other choice but to take it to court. And we built the case up on the fact that I had not been given a due procedure due to disability discrimination, that the Government Agency for Child Protection and the Ministry of Welfare had failed their investigation obligations when prohibiting me to attend a course where prospective foster parents are assessed further, and also that both the Ministry and the Child Protection Agency had only relied on selective evidence and information in their assessment. And in April 2018, the principal proceeding at the District Court took place, and there I had 1 judge and 2 advisory judges, and to all of our surprise, it was a doctor and a psychologist. And in June the same year, I lost the case in the District Court. And I can tell you that I don't remember much from that time, actually, because it was a really difficult time, and even though the outcome did not surprise me, considering everything, I guess you can never prepare yourself for a loss and defeat like that. But with support from my family and friends, I decided to keep going, and I appealed the outcome to the Courts of Appeal. And the principal proceeding there took place in February this year, and the case was won in March. And before the case was held in the Court of Appeals, the judges had this, what did I call it? I'm sorry. Yeah, they had a field inspection. So they came to my home. And this sounds really ridiculous, and it was really funny, actually, because they were just looking at my kitchen and bathroom, and just really, really funny. 5 minutes with them. But we decided to request this due to the claim that my home was like an institution, was claimed to be an institution. And I believe actually that this was helpful, because the judges saw with their own eyes that my home was just a home. And yeah, so I have gone over with you. I did that on Monday, like the main outcome. But as they decided this was disability discrimination, they also said that my case had not been investigated enough, and that the Child Protection Agency had not looked at all the material that they were obligated to do, And they also stated that personal assistance was not a barrier to parenting for disabled people, but actually an opportunity to be able to fulfill your role. And like to conclude, even though the government agency for child protection has decided to appeal this outcome, it is personally and legally and politically really important to me. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'm terrified about what is going to happen. But I truly hope this outcome won't be changed. And there's a lot I don't have time to tell you about. For example, the importance of solidarity from family and friends and other disabled people and organizations. I'm really blessed with the people around me, but I've also experienced silencing and lack of solidarity, for example, from the feminist movement and partly disability movements as well. People are sometimes afraid to speak up, and I think it's understandable in many ways, but for organizations, it's an important task to show solidarity because it can be really hard for individual disabled people to do it. They are sometimes in situations where they simply can't. And I would also like to tell you about the lack of access to justice for disabled people in Iceland, the financial risk of going to court, the emotional labor, and the massive hate I have experienced through the media and comment sections in Iceland, but that will have to wait for another time. But I think one of the many things that we can learn from this is that the justice system in Iceland and probably elsewhere, and the child protection sector is in massive need for unlearning about disability and ableist biases, and also the vicious cycles of contradictions about the best interest of the child is we need to talk about how that is used against children themselves and also marginalized groups. And I think that this is something that would need to be researched and explored to prevent the destruction it's causing marginalized families. And also that we need disabled people in the roles of decision making, because I think our absence is literally dangerous. It's not just convenient to have disabled people at the table, it's completely necessary. And I know I sound like a broken record, and we know this, and we're always talking about this, but I think because we have to say this constantly. Finally, I'm also thinking a lot about proof. What does that mean? And I'm also thinking about evidence and how we can better deal with that when we are so messed up with the definitions. And I want to end by quoting Sarah Ahmed, who is a queer feminist scholar and activist of color. And she wrote beautifully about evidence in relation to sexism and racism. And I want to finish with her words because I think exactly what she says is what I found made me the most powerless in this court case. All the things about the burden of proof, that you need to prove that you are fit, and they don't have to prove that I'm not. And also that how evidence is used and misused and often used against you. But she says, no matter how much evidence you have of racism and sexism, no matter how many documents, communications, encounters, no matter how much research you can refer to, or words you can defer to, words that might carry a history, what you have is deemed as insufficient. And the more you have to show, the more eyes seem to roll. And my proposition is simple, that the evidence we have of racism and sexism is deemed insufficient because of racism and sexism. Indeed, racism and sexism work by disregarding evidence or by rendering evidence unreliable or suspicious, often by rendering those who have direct experience of racism and sexism unreliable and suspicious. And this disregarding which is at once a form of recurring, has a central role in maintaining an order of things. Thank you. Thanks.